Hey there, this is an Amulet Titan deck tech video featuring one of our favorite non-legendary volcanoes. Although in this particular version of the deck, Valakut not being a legendary doesn't really matter here because I'm rarely going to be using more than one unless I get to some Vesuva shenanigans. But I digress. Here's the deck. If you just functionally quickly look at it, it looks a lot like my last deck tech video, except I'm missing the trinket mages. I also cut down on the number of Azusas, instead going up on the Dryad of the Elysian Groves, which combine with Valakut the Molten Pinnacle. So Dryad makes all of your lands every basic land type in addition to their normal types, where Valakut cares if you have at least 5 other mountains in play whenever you trigger landfall, whenever you trigger a mountain. And that gives you a free colorless lightning bolt. Now, if you look, I don't have any mountains in my deck, not a single one. So this Valakut is completely useless without the Dryad of the Elysian Grove. But if I have both together and happen to land at prime time or just have a bunch of lands because I don't know, I run a 30 land deck, I can trigger landfall a few times a turn and deal a bunch of free colorless lightning bolts to destroy my opponent's board. So, generally speaking, this deck wants to land a Primeval Titan as fast as possible. It can do it as fast as turn 2, which would involve an untapped land, an Amulet, a bounce land, a second Amulet, and then either an Explorer or an Azusa and a Prime Time. Summoner's Pact can be either an Azusa or a Prime Time. The actual math behind this is pretty low. Before Once Upon a Time was done, my brother ran a simulation. I think it was like 0.6% of opening hands, opening acceptable hands. This would say only an opening 7 or 6 that you would keep actually had the capacity to get a turn 2 kill. So it's a pretty rare. The whole thing dies to a lightning bolt if you have that or any counter spell. The turn 2 kill, that is. But that is the fastest you can get a prime time. Other than that, what you're looking at is trying to land a turn 3 or a turn 4 prime time, get some Field of the Dead triggers, and fill the board, make a good Grave Titan impression, fill the board up as fast as possible. You have a bunch of utility lands like Bajuka Bog, which can exile an opponent's graveyard or your own, if that's what you need to do. You have Cavern of Souls to make your creatures uncounterable. You have Castle Garenbrig, which ramps you up a whole mana. You have Ghost Quarter, which can destroy an opponent's land or your own. Radiant Fountain to gain some life. Slayer's Stronghold and Sunhome, which is part of the combo kill. Slayer's lets you attack with Prime Time the turn you play it. Sunhome gives your Titan double strike. You also have Tolaria West, which can be used to transmute to get any of these spells here or any of your lands. And then finally Valakut, which I've already went over, and Vesuva, which can copy any of your lands or any of your opponent's lands. I have won a game by flashing in a Vesuva with a Secura Tribe Scout in my end of my opponent's turn, copying their Celestial Colonnade, untapping, and killing them. Did you know a Celestial Colonnade swinging in with double strike is pretty scary? I did, especially since you can attack with it. It's got vigilance, and then you can use it after it's been declared as an attacker. Tap it for white mana, that you can use that white mana to activate Sunhome. Just cute little things that shouldn't matter but end up being fun. So all in all, I approached this Valakut list first off with the mana base. I didn't want to deviate too far away from my previous successful Amulet lists. Like here's my Trinket Mage list, which my last deck had. And you can see here the mana base is almost identical. Almost the exact same mana base here. I think I switched the number of forests and snow forests or something like that. I'm still testing the Misty. I think Misty's better if you're running Valakut than not. Because then you can sometimes get an extra Valakut trigger if you need to. Other than that, I actually don't like the fetch land. So the only thing I changed here from my last mana base, which I thought was gorgeous, beautiful, and I can get to why in a moment, is I dropped the second Field of the Dead for the Valakut. So they're both coming to play tap lands, and if you're going to be honest, if you're not triggering them, the Valakut's a little bit better because it gives you red mana, which is useful for activating Slayers or Sunhome, or just useful for making a bigger engineered explosives, and Field does not do that. But obviously they're both used in different situations. I did cut the 2 Trinket Mage, and if you notice I still have 6. This is actually still the exact same. I really just swapped the Trinket Mages and the Azusas and made the Azusas into Dryads. Dryads are not as good as Azusa at killing your opponent quickly. What a Dryad is good at is color fixing you and making Valakut a lethal kill. The sideboard also did not change too much, although I no longer was able to run Grafdigger's Cage as effectively because I'm not running Trinket Mage. So I wanted to approach this mana base, and I wanted to say, I want as many turn 1 green sources as possible, and I figured out a healthy number when you're running Once Upon a Time in this deck is 8. Normally, I'd want to be closer to 12 to 14. Like, let's say I wanted a turn 1 black source for Thoughtseize. I'd want 12 to 14 black sources, because I want to be able to go turn 1, Thoughtseize you, go. But this deck runs Once Upon a Time, so I have a little bit more flexibility. And if you look, the Secure Tribe Scouts, like, they're perfectly fine turn 2 play. Especially if I did like a turn 1 Amulet. And I have a lot more untapped colorless sources. So I'm perfectly fine at casting a turn 1 Amulet here. Jumping back to the Valakut list, you also might notice that I did run 1 Grazer over 3 Scout. That has less to do with Dryad being powerful, and more to do with my respect to mono red. Lava Dart is a heck of a card against me, and I wanted to have a turn 1 ramp spell I can keep in against them. I still think Scout is way stronger than Grazer. I respect anybody who plays for Grazer. I think it's a perfectly fine card. And if your play pattern is you want to go turn 1 Dork, turn 2 Dryad, turn 3 Titan, then yeah, Grazer's your guy. That handsome little sloth is certainly going to be your guy. If your play pattern is you want to get cute with Bojuka Bog, you want to be able to have a late game top deck turn into a bunch of Field the Dead triggers, you want to Scout over Grazer. I think the ceiling on Scout is much, much higher than Grazer. I mean, just alone, Secure Tribe Scout can lead to a turn 3 Titan without Amulet, but with Castle Garenbrig. So like a turn 1 Gemstone Mine, Scout, turn 2 land, like say Castle Garenbrig, turn 3 another land, you now have 6 mana here, or 5 mana, which becomes 6 with Castle Garenbrig. So Scout by itself is stronger. In a vacuum, Scout's stronger. If you're going to be playing Tron, the Mirror, Blue-White Control, any land destruction deck where they're going to be attacking your mana base, you need to be able to protect your lands because you can use Secure Tribe Scout in a bounce land to effectively counter a Field of Ruin or a Fulminator Mage trigger. If that's your goal, Secure Tribe Scout's better. If your goal is to beat Spot Removal, beat Lava Dart, beat Lightning Bolt, beat Fatal Push, and then Grazer's much stronger. If you notice, I'm still sticking with these 2 Explore. A big reason why is, again, if Scout dies, I still need to ramp. I don't want to go do nothing till turn 3, because against a fast deck, against Mono Red, for example, that's not going to cut it. If I don't do anything till turn 3, that isn't going to cut it. I need to progress my mana. And I think Explorer is that perfect little filler there, where it's just kind of, okay, I'll draw a card, which is always useful, and I get to play an extra land this turn. Maybe it's an extra Radiant Fountain trigger. Maybe it's just pushing my mana ahead a little bit so I can drop that prime time. Especially if I'm siding out my Scouts, then a turn 1 Grazer, turn 2 Explore can still lead to that play pattern of a turn 3 prime time. So Explorer is really here to open up my sideboard flexibility rather than be the best main board card. I have seen some people running 8 3-drops, 4 Zeus's, 4 Dryad, and I understand the sentiment there because Azusa is by far the better 3-drop, the better card in this deck. Azusa is phenomenal. We should be playing 4 of them. But Dryad's pretty darn good here too. Not just because of Valakut. The Valakut thing is cute. Yes, it gets you some free wins. Yes, it makes some play patterns really, really sweet. what I really liked about Dryad was all of a sudden my post board game plan almost got better. Now I have a 2/4 blocker against mono red. Now I have a 2/4 creature that lets my Ghost Quarter tap for blue for my negate. That lets my Selesnya Sanctuary tap for black to help cast my Dismember. Basically makes me not even care about Damping Sphere, which is just unreal. The reason this deck used to be so weak to Damping Sphere because it just completely shut down our bounce lands. Enter Castle Garenbreg and you say, oh, that's also really bad against Damping Sphere because this ability here adds 6 green mana, gets shut down by Damping Sphere, but now I have more actual green sources in my deck. So I already was feeling, and I cut a bounce land, so I'm already feeling less like Damping Sphere affects me, and now all of a sudden I have perfect colored mana with this Dryad. So the real hard part of Damping Sphere is that it messes up your colored mana sources. Running 30 lands means I'm still going to get to 6 mana. But not having the correct double green colored mana sources to drop prime time, that's always been its killer. But now I don't have to worry about that anymore. Now I can use any land in my deck to tap for red or white for my Slayer's Stronghold, even under a Damping Sphere, which is just unreal. It's just absolutely fantastic. That, I think, is the power of the Dryad. Dryad makes you a better mid-range threat without Valakut. All of a sudden you add Valakut, now you have just this extra element of attack. Ensnaring Bridge is much less powerful against you here, because you can just have a bounce land in hand, bam, 3 damage, bam, 3 damage, 6 damage a turn. If you add an Azusa, it gets even scarier. It's just really, really neat how this is building up. And because of that, one of the cards we're weakest against is Ashiok. And Ashiok's really good against Amulet Titan decks because it stops Teleria West, it stops Summoner's Packs, and it stops Primetime triggers. And also your Misty, but if you're running that. Now all of a sudden you have this threat engine, like you'll see in one of my games, where I'm just able to generate zombies every single turn thanks to Dryad. Now that play pattern already existed thanks to Azusa, but Azusa dies to Lightning Bolt. Dryad does not. So I'm just trying to showcase where even without Valakut, I think Dryad is a fine inclusion, still not nearly as good as Azusa because 3 is better than 2. Check that math for me. Check that math, but I'm pretty sure 3 is better than 2. But the little things Dryad does for you is pretty sweet. Scary note here. I've already heard people talk about having red decks having Boil as an answer to these Dryad decks. Now, in general, I think it's an absolute stupid thing to do in a competitive setting. I don't think opponents should be bringing in Boil against my Amulet Titan deck because Boil only does anything if I have a Dryad in play. Otherwise, I don't have a single mountain in my deck. I understand the reason for loving that blowout potential, and I know someone's going to get blown out, probably me, with a Boil as I'm trying to combo off with the Valakut triggers. But it is what it is, unfortunately. Just be aware of that. Choke also can hit you pretty hard if you have a Dryad in play. Otherwise, again, Choke only hits your breeding pools. Doesn't really do very much. So just a little play pattern to watch out for, particularly at like an FNM or something. I don't think any competitive setting. I'm not expecting a top table contender to be bringing in Boil against my Amulet Titan deck to try to get me when I'm playing Dryad. But something to note, if you want to get an FNM player, FNM Amulet Titan player, and you don't care about your win-loss record, you just want to go down in history as doing something incredible, and meme it out, my friend. So I have not really gone too much over the sideboard here, so it's time to go over the sideboard. Right now I have a split between Disdainful Stroke and Negate. Negate is something I can use to help stop an Ashiok or a Blood Moon if I need it. It's also something I've considered bringing in against certain burn players or mono red players in certain instances, just as a way to gain 3 life. Especially with the Dryad, I feel like I have a little bit better blue mana situation. Disdainful Stroke is for prime time, it's for Gifts Ungiven, it's for lots of different things. Arguably the best counterspell we have access to at the moment. I have 3 Dismembers. I know some other Titan players play only 2. I think we need 3. I think Devoted Druid decks, I think Spike Feeder decks, I think we absolutely need spot removal. I didn't even mention Infect. But you absolutely want these. Beast Within is one of my new favorite cards here. I played Beast Within a long time ago in Amulet, gotta be a year ago, because I was intrigued with how powerful Beast Within was in conjunction with just landing Primetime. I remember the old Primetime deck had to be like the Inkmoth Nexus, Kessig Wolf Run standard deck at the time, and that ran like Beast Within, Slagstorm, and I think like Garruk Primal Hunter, if I remember correctly. And it would just like Beast Within your dude, Slagstorm, make a beast with Garruk Primal Hunter, and land a Primetime and win with Kessig Wolf Run and Infect. And Inkmoth Nexus. So I was intrigued with that because I don't really care too much about the 3/3s here, right? As long as especially if I time it right, a 3/3 is never going to attack me profitably. Being able to blow up an Inkmoth Nexus, Karn, a Tron land, an Amulet Titan, a Bounce land, an Ashiok. Beast Within is a sideboard card that I've been bringing in almost every single matchup because Beast Within handles pretty much anything my opponent's going to be throwing at me. Obviously, Rexage is kind of like a worse Beast Within, but one that I can get off of Once Upon a Time or of Summoner's Pact. Always a fantastic inclusion. Again, I'm not running this main board because I'm using these cards to deal with my opponent's sideboard answers. If you're expecting a lot of Tron or Valakut or Amulet, then maybe a Beast Within in the main board could be something you're interested in. Although in that case, I'd probably rather have a Tech Edge. Engineered Explosives is my another removal spell here, just as a second one for things like Boggles, humans, or any other random thing you're going to be exposed to in a Modern League. Then I have, instead of running the Radiant Fountain, I'm running an Obstinate Baloth. I think it's just better in the face. It's obviously worse against Burn. I think it's better against Mono Red because it puts a blocker in play, which I think is more important than the life gain. And also, Obstinate Baloth has some additional text, where now all of a sudden you get to pitch it for free to a Liliana, to a Kolaghan's Command, and it has this fantastic ability where it's just, what's this? 4/4, which means if your opponent is running Ashiok and trying to shut down your Primetime, you can run out of Baloth, and most Ashiok decks have creatures smaller than like a 4/4. Especially if you can dismember, clear a path, you might be able to kill that Ashiok. Ramunap Excavator is, of course, there to rebuy lands, which is very useful in the face of Field of Ruin and Fulminator Mage. Tireless Tracker, I want a second Tireless Tracker in my 75. This is really the card I want against Ashiok decks. Just absolutely takes over the game by herself. I have a second Field the Dead, which I always want in my 75 going forward. I have a Tectonic Edge to hit other big mana decks as well as control. And then here's my 15th, my flex spot in the... actually, in these videos here, I believe it was an extra Valakut. I had just changed it right after the league ended when I entered the MTGO Modern Preliminaries last night. And I just wanted an extra hate card against Mono Red, so I threw in a Baloth there instead of that Valakut. I think that's correct. Second Valakut is pretty nice in certain spots, but I think just in the metagame I was expecting, I didn't actually face Mono Red once, but I think that the second Baloth was correct there. But that card could be an extra Disdainful Stroke, an extra Tracker, an extra Valakut, an extra Cavern of Souls, which would have been way more helpful for me in the MTGO preliminary last night than anything else I had. So Still working in that 15th slot, but I think the other 14 are pretty locked in at this point. Although I might change what these are, but they're still going to be counter spells. So that is the deck tech. I'm pretty happy with it right now. Currently have a like an 82% win rate with Amulet Titan this week. Done a couple leagues into that Modern Prelim, so I'm very happy with it. And I hope you guys like the deck tech. Let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions of something else you could put in the sideboard. Anything else you'd like to see. Thanks, and I will see you in the next one.